Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them. They never rent quality flicks. They always pick the most intellectually devoid movie on the racks.
And now, on with the show.
The basketball team is planning a party. A slumber party to bare their souls.
No, I think your tits are getting bigger. Mine?
All the girls are coming, except Mary and Linda. And they won't be missed.
Courtney Bates has got some weird friends.
I have got the fastest growing dick I've ever had in my entire life. I mean, look at this thing.
Summertime. And the only thing the girls of Malibu Beach need is good music, good friends, and guys.
So, what's it worth to you?
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, a guy like that, that's just the kind of guy we need at the party tonight.
They just invited the wrong guy.
Hey guys, what's going on? You're listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net's Loose Cannon. I am your host, Mike the Birdman, and I welcome you into the Twig video store of yesteryear, where we take a look at some of the big box VHS forgotten DVDs, things you may find on YouTube, Tubi, other streaming services, could be Shudder, could be Screambox, could be something you find in your dad's closet. I don't know. But I'm one of your video clerks tonight, and I want to welcome to the show, we have some special guests clerks who've decided to bus in all the way from the faraway land of Ohio. And for that, I'm so sorry. We are joined by the hosts of Welcome to Prime Time, Henrique Couto and David Bartholomew Denoyer.
Hey,
Esquire.
it's good to be here.
Esquire. There we go. Yeah, we forgot the Esquire.
He's only a lawyer legally which is ironic, in Belize. The country of Belize.
He knows things about me all the time that I don't even know about myself. I don't know how this happens.
I have sources.
Yeah, clearly.
My dog Henwolf was in the CIA, which you keep forgetting.
Oh yeah, she did have that picture with Henry Kissinger. I forget about that.
Oh, that was a candid too. They weren't posing. They were just hanging out on a farm. But no, it's good to be back at the Twig video store. This is Davey's first time.
It is.
And I'm happy that we could happy is in air quotes, but I'm happy we could bring him out, because you want to talk about three films that are so massively near and dear to my heart. And I would say they're pretty damn near and dear to Dave's, but they're really like the Slumber Party Massacre movies are like a element of my personality.
You have attraction to it at a level of knowledge that I appreciate, but also scares me.
There's something special about those massacre movies of the late 80s and early 90s. Really there's just something about them, about the Sorority House Massacre movies, about the Slumber Party Massacre movies. There's just something about them that is really cozy. I don't know. It's just a thing.
Yeah, so how we decided to come upon this topic, and for those of you who are maybe new to the show here on Loose Cannon, we tend to talk about movies that maybe get overlooked or forgotten about, or just something we're really excited to talk about. So a couple of weeks ago, it was like 2:00 in the morning, and Henrique just happened to be up on Facebook. And I'm thinking, guys, I'm fucking bored. I want to watch something scary, and I want to see something really bloody. I have all these services. What's available? And Henrique says, hey, Mike, have you ever seen Slumber Party Massacre? No. And I'm like, okay, sure. What am I in for? Now, I watched the first two on Shudder a couple of weeks ago, and then I watched them again on YouTube and Tubi last night because Shudder took them off in Canada. So goddamn rights
Bastards.
Expiring. I hate that thing. And then I was talking with Dave again a couple of days later, and he's like, hey, have you seen the remake? And I'm like, what? So again, I found that through a service in Canada called Crave, which turns out that's a sci-fi or sci-fi original movie that came out a couple of years ago, and watched that. And it's funny, for about the first 20 minutes, I was like, oh, fuck off. And then I'm like, oh, Oh,
it really
that's
hits a
just not
stride.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really hits a great stride.
So to get into these movies, I guess we'll start with you, Enrique, then we'll go to Dave, and then we'll come to me. How did we come across these movies? Like I said, for me, it was very much a recommendation on you. But these movies have always existed in the background for me, just because I've known about them, but I never saw them. And now that I've been educated in the ways of the Driller Killer, it is time to get into our history with this amazingly strange and fascinating franchise.
So for me, growing up in the Midwest of the United States and having cable readily accessible, because we being my mother, very good at stealing cable when I was a kid. You got to understand, when you grow up in a kind of a rougher part of the country, it's just nobody bats an eye, at stolen cable, when there's crack being sold a couple blocks over. They're too busy ignoring that crime to pay attention to even another one. But no, so I had constant access to cable, and the movie that actually started my interest in the massacre movies was actually Sorority House Massacre 2, which is not in the same film series, but it is produced by Roger Corman, directed by Jim Wynorski, and it was a classic. But I was so young when I saw it. It was on cable, and I didn't even know what it was. So it took me years and years and years until I stumbled on those movies. And that's how we get to Slumber Party Massacre. So fast forward to like 2001, 2002, DVD is just about to hit the height of its, not of its power, but of its just total supremacy. It's about to become the most profitable thing in show business, is going to be DVD by 2004. And Roger Corman's studio, Concord New Horizons, is just pumping out DVDs as fast as they can. That's how I found Slumber Party Massacre. I'd heard the title. It was such a classic title. And then the DVD was sitting on the shelf for $11.99 at Best Buy. I bought the first one and the second one because they all came out at once. And then I had to wait about a year for the third one. But that's how I saw them. And then around the same time, Sorority House Massacre 1 and 2 came out. And when I bought those blind, I watched the first one. I was like, okay, slasher. And Dave and I just recently revisited Sorority House Massacre. It's actually pretty fun.
That's great.
But when 2 started playing in my little teenage bedroom, I went, oh, that's that movie from Late Night Cable. The one I could never remember the name of, with Clive Hochstetter in it. So that's kind of like where my attraction to them came from, because I remember seeing the first Slumber Party Massacre and going like, oh, this is just a hell of a lot of fun. And in many ways, the Slumber Party Massacre movies are everything I personally like out of a slasher movie, even though I'm a huge Freddy Krueger fan. I'm a huge Halloween fan. I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan. At the end of the day, there's just something about those 3 Slumber Party Massacre movies I could watch anytime. And the fact that they're so varied. You have the first one, which is serious, but with a lot of humor. You have the second one, which is just bonkers. And then the third one is very dark.
Yeah. God.
I mean, there's a Slumber Party Massacre for every mood. As bizarre as that is.
Yeah, that's really kind of strange. Like, while I was watching these movies myself, I got to thinking, you can really kind of pick your poison with these movies, and depending on what mood you're in, you'll probably have a fun time with like one of the 4 of them anyway.
Oh yeah. Especially with the remake thrown in, because that you get your kind of modern super meta. Like, there was a meta thing going on before, with Slumber Party Massacre 2 especially.
Yeah.
But that remake is super meta, hyper meta, beyond meta.
I feel like it's also a legacy sequel. I mean, more than anything, because that movie, I wasn't prepared for it. You had even told me ahead of time, Ann, that you were like, it's a lot of fun, but it's not what you expect. And you were dead on with that.
Well, they kind of play with your expectations of it being a remake. So they start to make you think you're going to get a bunch of stuff you won't like. And then they give you other stuff you may not like, but it's at least very amusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie was a hardcore swerve. Like I was saying during the intro there, I thought, like, this is bullshit. It's a remake. And then, oh, it's not.
No,
and when
not.
you told me that it was, then when I think it was David mentioned to me, it was the same guy who did the Banana Splits movie. I'm thinking, oh, okay.
I want to say it was actually a woman that did the Banana Splits movie. I believe it was a female.
No, you're
Yeah. And then I'd recently sat down and watched Willy's Wonderland, I think that same night. And I was like, okay, this is so strange. And you guys had told me, like, yeah, the Slumber Party Massacre remake is in this same kind of vibe. I'm thinking, all right, cool. So I sat down and I really, really enjoyed it. So I guess we'll throw things over to Dave. How did you get into these movies?
So the year is 2007.
No, it's not. It's 2023.
I hate you, Henrik.
But go on.
Time.
The year is 2007, and Henrik and I have talked at long lengths about video stores. We had Hollywood Video a mile or two down the road from my house growing up. So when we would go grocery shopping, Kroger was right there, and Hollywood Video was right there. And 2007, this would place me freshman year, I think. And I was going to the store with my mom, and she's like, "Let's stop by Hollywood Video." I'm in the store, I'm seeing things that I've been looking up online and whatnot. And then I come across a movie that was one that I had been wanting to see, but we didn't have the channel at the time. Starz did a documentary in 2006 called Going to Pieces, The Rise and Fall of Slasher Films. And I'd been wanting to see this because they talked to people like Rob Zombie, Alice Cooper's in it a little bit. They talked to Jeff Katzman, I think his name is, like a bunch of people, but they feature all these clips from these slasher films of the 70s, 80s into some of the 90s stuff and later stuff as well. So I loved this documentary because it opened my eyes to all these films that I had no idea existed. And one of which they talked heavily about because they talked to the director, and I think they even talked to Corman a little bit, is Slumber Party Massacre. And the thing they said about Slumber Party Massacre was it was almost made as to be a spoof. But I remember the first time watching Slumber Party Massacre was when I got my hands on a copy when Shout Factory released the 3-pack on DVD. And I was working at FYE at this point as a manager, I think. And that 3-pack came out and I snatched it up because I had a discount that was pretty good. And I remember just mainlining all three movies. And Henrik and I we weren't exactly friends at this point, but we knew each other.
We still aren't exactly friends at this point.
Listen. I don't appreciate that, but I'm not surprised at all. But anyway, but no, a lot of people don't know this, but Henrik was a celebrity to me growing up because literally my buddy Xander and I would go to Independent Shadow Cinema that was put on by Henrik and I's late great friend Andrew Kopp. And it was basically a double feature that had a newish indie film that he wanted to showcase, and then the double feature after was a secret. And that was where Henrik got some of his best riffing on, and that was where Xander and I just kind of noticed him. So when I first worked on Babysitter Massacre, that was kind of the first time that Henrik and I really had worked together and had talked at length and whatnot. So it's funny because going back to what I was saying in regards to watching these films was I texted Henrik when I was watching 2, and I was like, dude, I'm watching Slumber Party Massacre 2 for the first time, and I don't know what's going on. And all I got back in that text was ... good with a exclamation point.
That sounds like me.
Yeah. So I mainlined all three films. First time I ever saw them, and it's kind of funny because I got to watch them last night. I hadn't seen them in a while, and I got to watch them last night with my girlfriend Allie. And basically, that was her first time watching the first one, but we had been at Henrik's house for Joe Bob when he had showed the second one, but my girlfriend's hearing impaired and there weren't captions. So Allie basically watched a silent film, essentially, of Slumber Party Massacre 2 with no idea of what's going on, like no dialogue or anything. And literally, last night, we had finished Slumber Party 1, and she had a bunch of critiques for it, which I'm sure I'll bring up as we go through the show. But in part 2, she's like, I thought captions would help the movie make sense, but it doesn't. But I like this movie way more than I do the first one. And I was like, I know it's kind of more fun than the first one, but the first one I really, really like. But at the same time, too, I feel like it's Halloween with extra steps without Loomis. The more I watch it.
You think Slumber Party Massacre 1 is like Halloween?
So they start at a high school, basically.
Well, sure.
And then they follow them home to the house where he creeps around a bit. He kills some people. And then there's the whole basically showdown and everything, at the there were a lot of pieces last night that felt like Halloween, especially set pieces, where it just kind of felt like
I could see that.
Both a homage or both of a spoof sense, but it's just like the more I watch Slumber Party Massacre, I don't see it as a spoof. I see it as a legitimate slasher, and Corman knew what he was doing.
Oh, yeah. No, well, and it's important to point out that Slumber Party Massacre is in so many, many ways a total standout oddity in this realm of film, because it was based on a screenplay called Sleepless Nights, written by Rita Mae Brown. Rita Mae Brown was a feminist writer who had written tons of articles and books about the burgeoning feminist movement at that time. And a lot of people have decided that because Rita Mae Brown wrote that screenplay, that the movie is a parody. I hear people claim that all the time, especially Corman. Corman loves to claim whatever is convenient for the film to be successful. And I can't fault him on that. But the concept that Slumber Party Massacre was always a parody doesn't make any sense, because the script was written like a year after Halloween had happened.
Okay.
So there was no slasher movement to make fun of. And even with Rita Mae's script written before, Slumber Party Massacre comes out and there's still barely any slasher movies yet.
Yeah.
It was completely still new. So I don't buy the whole concept that this was a parody. It had some gallows humor. It had some elements. I would say it had some, phenomenal strong female characters, but it didn't have like a wink and a nod so much. Amy Holden Jones directed it, and I think that she brought to the script a lot of great stuff, but she literally found it in a discard pile. Of stuff that Roger Corman had either purchased or had an option toward. So I think that the movie has a lot to like, and I think there's a lot of reasons why people enjoy it. But I never bought the idea that it was always meant to be some kind of a grand parody. I always got the idea that this was just a really fun horror movie made mostly by women.
And I get that. No, I totally get that.
Mm-hmm. So when I first heard about Slumber Party Massacre, it has one of those names that immediately catches your mind's eye, because it conjures this idea of a cheesy slasher movie. It almost sounds like, and I know you were just talking about it seeming like parody, but not parody. It sounds like something you'd hear on The Simpsons or on Family Guy. It's such a ridiculous name. It shouldn't be a real movie, yet is.
Yeah, well, that was all Corman.
He was a master.
And I remember picking up a book sometime before high school, and it was about all these different horror movies. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I really wish I knew what book it was, but it was talking about special effects, and it was talking about Tom Savini. There was Dawn of the Dead in there, and all these little
Scream Greats, maybe.
And it was like this giant glossy book. So this would have been about 1989, maybe 91 at the latest. And I remember seeing a picture of the driller killer holding out his power drill, and he's doing that peacock like walk. And it's this great still. And that always stuck with me. And I remember the poster for Slumber Party Massacre specifically, just with the girls all cowering and the drill between the guy's legs. And it just never clicked with me. And then flash forward years and years later to when you guys recommended these movies to me. This was such a trip that I didn't expect to like the first one as much as I did. Naked Girl certainly helped. And then the second one. And if you guys remember that Facebook conversation, I'm constantly texting you guys 2:00 in the morning. Both of you are responding. And I'm like, what in the fuck is happening?
Birdman, I think me and Henrik were sitting next to each other while that conversation was going
totally
on,
possible. That's totally
I'm 90%
possible.
sure that's what happened.
Well, and I want to mention that poster, that iconic poster for Slumber Party Massacre, which I have an original one sheet for which is not in good shape. It was the only one I could afford. It was beat to hell, but it's signed by Brink Stevens and Deborah DeLisso and the guy who played the driller killer and a couple other people. Because I was at a Slumber Party Massacre reunion at Cinema Wasteland in Cleveland. But that poster, that image of the girls all cowering in the drill with the guy's legs and everything, that photo was taken by Jim Wynorski, because he was in the publicity and marketing department at New World. It's still New World at that point. But he was in that department. So believe it or not, Jim Wynorski, who would eventually become one of the greatest exploitation filmmakers of his era, was the one who snapped those photos. And he took a lot of he did a lot of poster campaigns for Roger Corman, including some for his own films. So it's just fascinating how far that can go. But the original title was Sleepless Nights, which makes it sound even less like a parody.
That's an erotic thriller, if anything.
Yeah, that
was like before erotic thrillers existed.
Well,
I mean, we're like just a little early.
That's a sad time.
But the other thing to keep in mind is Rita Mae Brown wrote other screenplays, and none of them, they were like, I'm not trying to insult Rita Mae Brown. She wrote a lot of amazing books and was a very interesting person, but she was like any other writer, hungry, needed work, needed money. So when you can write, agents tell you, hey, well, then write a screenplay. Maybe we could sell it to Hollywood. So she not only wrote Slumber Party Massacre, she wrote a made-for-TV movie called Long Hot Summer, a made-for-TV movie called My Two Loves, and a TV movie called Rich Men, Single Women, a TV movie called The Woman Who Loved Elvis. Now, you notice there's a pattern here, which is that they're all TV movies. And that's where the good money is to make fast for writers. So I don't think Rita Mae Brown came up with Sleepless Nights as some brilliant critique of the horror genre that had barely even started. I think she just plain wrote what she knew she could sell.
I think that's a very valid statement. Absolutely.
Yeah, and considering how hot horror was after the Friday the 13th and the Halloweens had really hit, Corman probably say, hey, we can do this too, and we can do it fast and cheap. So it probably just worked out.
Oh, yeah. Well, and so do you know the story of how the movie came to be, the first one?
No, let's kind of go into the history of the first one, and then we'll just work our way through the series. So I leave the floor to you.
Well, to keep it relatively spry and svelte, basically, Amy Holden Jones, I believe is her name. Now I want to make sure. Amy Holden Jones, who directed the first film, she was working at Corman's studio, doing, this, that, or the other. And she really wanted to make a film, a feature. So she took that script she found, Sleepless Nights, and she filmed the first, I think it was like 3 pages on a weekend, borrowing Roger's equipment without permission, hiring actors on deferred pay. She filmed it and then was editing it to try and have like a show reel. And when she showed it to Roger, she was terrified that he was going to be very upset. And instead, Roger was just like, can you do that for the whole script? And she claims that she never intended to make the whole film, that she just grabbed a script she thought seemed interesting and made the first scene in order to make a prove that she could direct. But then, of course, in Roger's eyes, he was like, well, we already have that one scene. Let's film the rest of them. We're closer to done with this movie than any other movie. So that's kind of how it happened.
So to give her placement real quick in Roger Corman's history, she was the editor on Hollywood Boulevard, one of 3 with Joe Dante and Alan Arkish.
Yeah, so she was probably, if she was working with them on that movie, then she was probably an apprentice editor.
Yeah,
because they had been the lead editors at New World for 5 or 6 years. So she was probably learning under them to become, a major editor there.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So yeah, so that's how you got Slumber Party Massacre. Now, of course, they made the whole film under the title Sleepless Nights, and then the second that the film was handed over to Roger, boom, it became Slumber Party Massacre without a moment's break.
I wonder what that would sound like, Henrik.
Well, we've decided to go in a different direction than the piss poor title that the film originally had. We were going to go with Big Tit Massacre, but. And I think this is appropriate. The film does have quite a variation of sizes and breasts. So we went with a more inclusive title of simply Slumber Party Massacre.
Can somebody deep fake this? Because this would be amazing.
I can't believe he had that recording just on hand of Roger Corman's voice.
Dave, there's nothing on earth Dave likes more than getting me to do Roger Corman's voice or getting me to do Joe Dante's voice. Or even better, having them interact with each other.
Well, mostly being bullied by Roger Corman, which I love. Yeah, I love Dante and Corman both with this bit.
I love Joe Dante, but he's got a voice that's very easy to parody. He sounds very specific. So then you just have like, Roger, I don't know if this movie's going to work. What the hell do you know, you little idiot? Roger, you don't have to be mean like that. We've been friends our whole lives. Shut the fuck up. Like, Roger's just a total Chad in my version of history. But no, and I cannot recommend enough. If you haven't read the book, How I Made 100 Films in Hollywood and Never Lost a Dime, the Roger Corman story, read it. It's super good. it's super one-sided because it's from his perspective, but he's not too self-aggrandizing. And there's another script you can find, which I'd have to look, or another book you can find, which I'd have to look up the name, but it's written by one of his assistants. If you read both of them, I feel like you almost get the truth.
I feel like, the one with the movie come out like in the 90s?
What?
His book about the How to Make 100 Films, wasn't that dropped in the 90s?
Yes, in the early 90s, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so, okay.
There's something that I've noticed about certain Roger Corman movies. Now, I'll admit my knowledge of his catalog is not very deep or vast, but everything that I've seen, when it really stands out, like the Slumber Party Massacre movies and Chopping Mall and maybe a few other ones, they're really, really good. And I know they're made on the cheap, but there's something about them that there seems to be a real charisma from anybody who is acting in it. They usually have a memorable soundtrack in some capacity, and there's always a few really memorable shots in it. So there's something that Corman, I don't know how he manages to get the amazing results on film that he does, considering, like I said, he pumps out so many, so there's bound to be some stinkers. But there's other ones that are just, they're really gems, and I'm honestly surprised I hadn't jumped on the Roger Corman train a lot sooner.
Yeah, I've been obsessed with Roger for like my entire life, and the reason that his films often turned out so well is because Roger had a keen eye for not necessarily talent so much as people who took the art and craft of filmmaking seriously, because that's what Roger always cared about. He cared about, like, it wasn't, are you the best writer in the world? It was, are you a writer that understands act structure? Are you a writer that understands why we have this many pages? Are you a writer who understands where to put action and where to put dialogue in order to keep the audience interested? And Roger always had this attitude that, you know, if you made a film with him and it was dirt cheap, he would interfere very little. You would get to make the film you wanted. And in his words, if you do a good job, you'll never have to work for me again.
Yeah.
Because he would find people that, I mean, a lot of these people, a lot of the films that are super memorable from Corman were people making their first feature. This was literally their audition to a career in show business.
Well, and let's throw out the obvious here too. I mean, the biggest name in movie history at this point, because of the box office he can bring in, is James Cameron, who directed Piranha 2, The Spawning.
But more importantly than that, because, you know, in a lot of ways that movie was taken from him.
Yeah.
He did Battle from the Beyond the Stars, Galaxy of Terror, I believe. He was Corman's go-to guy for building sets and props basically nothing.
So I guess it's time for us to dive into each of these movies. Now, David is on Welcome to Primetime, is sort of knowledgeum or reads from IMDb or has extensive notes. So for each of these movies, David's going to provide a summary in as short as possible. And we'll talk about each movie as we kind of go through over the course of the next, like, however long these guys want to talk to me. Absolutely. And we'll just kind of see what happens here. Because each movie, as Henrique had said, there's a different mood and flavor of each. So each movie gives you something a little bit different. There's always something memorable about each of them. So Dave, now you have the floor.
All right. So we are talking 1982 release date. At 1 hour and 17 minutes long, The Slumber Party Massacre, directed by Amy Holden Jones, written by Rita Mae Brown and Amy Holden Jones. And basically our story here, according to IMDb, so if there's any issues with these, take it up with them. A female high school student slumber party turns into a bloodbath as newly escaped psychotic serial killer wielding and a power drill kill plows through the neighborhood.
Okay, let's get Dave hooked on phonics before he does this.
So basically, in the simplest terms, a girl has a slumber party with her friends. A killer is already in the town who's escaped from an asylum that killed 10 people several years prior. And he infiltrates the slumber party and kills people around the house before getting inside the house. That's fair, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that happens in the movie, yeah.
And one of the things I noticed while watching this movie is when I was thinking about other slashers that came out around this time, the characters I found in this one, they weren't stupid, or at least not overly stupid.
Yeah.
The boys were complete dunces, which, it is what it is. But I was actually kind of surprised by the relationship between Valerie and Courtney. I was really happy with how they were sisters, and the one girl didn't get invited to the slumber party. She's like, okay, fine, I'm going to stay home and look after my sister while the girls are across the street enjoying Maui Wowie. And, giant things of Kool-Aid. And, it's being ostracized, not a great time. But hey, if you'd been there, you probably would have been one of the first victims of Russell Thorne. So, okay, sure. And I really liked just the chemistry that those two had. And I found this out last night, and this kind of bummed me out. The girl who played Valerie, she unfortunately passed away in the mid-90s, and that kind of shocked me. I was like, oh, that's unfortunate. And I mean, just to kind of tell you guys, I guess, kind of straight out, she unfortunately had a battle with mental illness, and she took her own life. But the documentary Sleepless Nights does kind of pay a little bit of tribute to her, and everybody on the cast had everything nice to kind of say about her. She was really a supportive person on set. And so I guess to kind of talk about the first movie, like you guys were saying, it was not written as parody. It was played very straight, but with some very nice gallows humor. I think there are two gags in that movie that I love so much. The pizza boy death. Love that.
That's so good. So good.
And the follow-up where they eat the pizza.
I feel better already.
Laying next to his body. Yeah. When I'm scared, I get hungry. It makes me feel better. See, I feel better already.
So good.
Oh my God, so good.
And then the fridge gag. I thought that was so good. And that's something I think kind of was pioneering at the time, because you would see horror movie humor, but that seemed a little bit smarter than I think it had any right to be in this particular movie.
I can see
just
that.
Because the way that they play it, Courtney goes to open the fridge. Oh, come on. Body's halfway out. Okay. Closes the door again. Body starts to fall again. Okay. No. Close the fridge, and then the body goes back in. And I'm thinking, okay, that is really that's Scream level of funny. And I'm thinking, okay, for 1982, didn't see that coming. Totally appreciate it. And then the girls get smart. They think, okay, we have to arm up. We have to figure this out. The boys figure, okay, we'll split up. And they're stupid, but they're trying to think tactically to evade this guy. And this guy just happens to be in the right place at the right time to kill kind of both of them. And because of the situation that they're in, when Valerie doesn't listen to the guy pounding on the door, she's watching TV, the volume's up too loud, and she's thinking, I'm just not going to answer that. It's really late at night and I don't want to do that. So if she'd come to the door and answered it, she'd probably be dead too. But if it's situational awareness. And I like it when a movie gives you a valid explanation as to why something is happening. And I thought that was tremendously smart given the setup for her. She's very cautious. She doesn't want to go outside, and it works. And even there's a point where Courtney makes a comment towards her sister, says, oh, there's a dog outside in the trash. And Valerie's like, oh, well, why don't you go clean up? I'm not going out there alone at night in the dark. Are you nuts? And again, smart meta humor. And I really, really enjoyed that about this movie. And yeah, there's just so much to like about this. I mean, and it's weird because I remember thinking the first time I saw this movie, I thought the driller killer was kind of goofy. I'm thinking, okay, so he has range with the drill, but not too hard to evade. But then I got to thinking, okay, when you're in a small enclosed space, you're probably not getting around that. And even when Valerie runs downstairs to get a weapon to fight this guy off, she's like, okay, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. This works because it's not powered. And I'm thinking, okay, clever. And again, it's not like Friday the 13th. It's not like Halloween where the weapons and defenses were things of convenience. She had to think things through. And I really appreciate her as a final girl. Now, does she get the ending she deserves in Slumber Party Massacre 2? No, but we will kind of get to that. So I guess we'll go back around the room. Yeah. So what were some of the favorite parts that you guys liked about this movie that really worked for you?
And Dave, you go first.
All right. So the one thing that I can say, like, first off, from just the first 10 seconds in, they throw that title at you so quick, you know what you're getting. Like, that music tells you, and that's one thing too, like with the score especially, you know the movie you are getting. That when you sit down and watch Slumber Party Massacre, if you don't know already by the title, you know what movie you are getting. And they make that very clear that this is a slasher film. It's literally less than 80 minutes. And the one thing that I picked up most, I would say last night, there's a lot of slasher tropes in this that weren't, as Henrik said earlier, weren't even tropes because the slasher boom had not happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy to kind of like watch it. And like I said earlier, like Halloween with Extra Steps, it just kind of feels like that because you essentially have two houses where your main characters are. And if you take Loomis out of the equation of Halloween, Courtney and Valerie are the Loomis substitute because you're essentially getting their point of view from what's going on. And you're seeing all this chaos with Russ Thorne. You're seeing all this chaos with the boys that you mentioned earlier are pretty stupid and annoying, but that's part 2, in my opinion. We'll get there. But the thing I loved most about it is it's exactly the kind of film that you expect from this title, but not in the exploitative or just general assumption crowd, because this movie does have the kills, it has the suspense, it has the score, it has the setting. I just personally really enjoy watching this movie every time because it's exactly what I want from a slasher film in 80 minutes or less. And it's got some great moments. Like you already mentioned the pizza boy, but one of the things that like Allie pointed out last night was the opening when the girl wakes up in bed. She's like, why is her radio on the floor? And that was the first time I ever thought about that. We're just like,
because she's in college. She's stupid, you know, or high school. Sorry.
Yeah, but no, you're fine. It's just like, it's like, there's things you pick up on this movie every time you watch it. And I mean, I know Henrik has seen it. I'm gonna estimate, and you tell me how close I am. If you think in your general brain,
okay, I'm
gonna guess you've seen this at least 30 times.
I would say that's on the low end of my estimation.
You think so? I was curious.
I would watch that DVD every weekend, just about, especially if I was like too broke to rent anything new. And I used to show it to anybody who'd watch it.
Yeah,
like I still kind of do that to people. But I used to I'd get a new girlfriend, got to show them Slumber Party Massacre, you know, alone and sad, but you have chicken nuggets. Also time for Slumber Party Massacre. You know, it's a way of life for me.
It's a great movie for just showing somebody, A, because of the runtime, B, because it literally just jumps from scene to scene to scene, but not in an order that shakes you up. Like you ride this movie because once it starts, it doesn't stop. Like, there's gags, there's dialogue to build up the whole plot of the film and everything. But when the credits started rolling last night, I was like, oh yeah, that's it. Like it was kind of one of those things where it's like this movie moves at a really, really fun pace. And you get to go through different emotions because you laugh, you hate it when some characters bite it. Like I still hate the fact that Brink Stevens is only in 10 minutes of it.
She's the first kill.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
you know, yeah, she is.
No, she's the first kill.
Yep.
Yeah. And so speaking of that, I want to mention my favorite moment of the movie is a moment that really tells you exactly what you're getting and how there's no pretension.
Yeah.
And it involves it's the big shower scene at the high school where there's like all these girls in the shower all at once. It's like, they were like, you know, what does a horror movie have? A shower scene? Well, we've got a shower with like 15 women in it. But there's a part when Brink is starting her shower as the girls are talking that the camera literally pans down to her butt. And then pans back up. So thereby negating any concept of that pan being for any reason other than to show her butt and then get back to the scene. And I'm not just saying that's great because it's a phenomenal butt. I'm saying it's great because there's no sense of like, we're going to pretend we're better than what we are. We're going to pretend we're not giving you exactly what you want. One of my biggest ways of telling people how to make a film to make money, to make a film that people are going to watch, has been, I'm always telling people, like, if you bought or rented or bought a ticket to see this movie with this title, with this trailer, or with this poster, whatever, and it was what we're watching right now or what you just made, how would you feel? Would you feel like you're getting what you wanted, or would you feel like you kind of got tricked? And that's always the question. And Babysitter Massacre, that's my movie. Slumber Party Massacre.
Self-promotion.
Hey, but Slumber Party Massacre is absolutely the epitome of the kind of thing you like if you like that kind of thing. Not to quote Abraham Lincoln too often in a day,
But also to give you perspective on Henrik when it comes to titles, Henrik and I saw Burnt, the Bradley Cooper, Anthony Bourdain loosely based story. And the one complaint Henrik had that nothing got burnt in the film.
Yeah, there's no food. How do you have so many scenes in kitchens and not just let one dish get burnt so that the point of the movie makes sense?
This is to give you an insight into Henrik's brain.
Oh man, I'm in my mid 30s, but I'm like your dad when we go to them. Not your literal dad, but like a dad. When I go to the movies, I'm like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Sport? Why is it that way? Sport?
My favorite still, we won't go into the whole story, but your moment in Nefarious with the firearm trivia.
Yeah, I was like, are you familiar with Nefarious, Mike?
No, but I'm pretty good with guns.
I mean, I am too. And that was kind of the thing. Nefarious was this possession horror movie that came out, and it was distributed by a mostly Christian distribution company.
Same people that did God's Not Dead films.
Oh, and it has a bit of a bent. I mean, it's a movie about a demonic possession. I don't see how it's shocking that it's made by Christians, but the only part that bothered me is I was like, really? You guys have all of this stuff going on, but you didn't, the guy writing the script, the director making it, the editor doing it, none of you knew how a gun works. Now, but a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about how semi-automatic firearms work.
Correct.
A lot of people do. Like they think that they click when they're empty. They don't, because the trigger doesn't re-pull when they're empty. Things like that. So anyway, I digress because Dave's trying to get me on a tirade because he loves seeing me angry.
It's not angry. It's the passion and love for what you do.
It's passionate.
I mean, I got that in spades.
I'm more.
So I guess moving on to the sequel, which I will say this. I think this is my favorite of the Slumber Party Massacre movies. Again, referring to that text conversation, what the fuck is going on? And I didn't realize this till I was halfway through the movie. I'm watching the lead, Crystal Bernard. It is 3:00 in the morning. My house is quiet. The cats are asleep. My wife's passed out in the other room. Holy shit, it's the girl from fucking Wings. I had such a thing for her. And I was like, oh my God, she's so young and so hot. I'm totally dating myself there. Shut up. But I was so thrilled to see her in something that wasn't Wings. And it was just like, sometimes I get really excited when I see people I know from sitcoms in other things. Like I remember how excited I got to see Helen Hunt in Trancers, because it was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Yeah. Which, by the way, we got to talk fucking Trancers at
I love Trancers.
You're talking the right guy again.
Oh, I love those movies so much. Full Moon is my fucking jam. But I was so impressed with it. And then it just got weirder. When the musical sequence hit, I had to pause the movie, text you guys, and I think I was like, the fuck is happening? And I think Henrik was just like, just sit back and enjoy. Buzz or some shit like that. And it was just,
take it in.
He totally did. No, he totally did. Because I was sitting next to you.
My reply might have been, you say why, I say because let's buzz.
And I was like, holy shit. And it's such a fucking catchy tune. And
oh yeah,
like watching it last night, I was like, okay, I can understand that this is a traumatic event, and your sister is in the crazy house now, not to disparage anybody, but
the funny farm, that's the politically correct term.
Why would you reimagine this killer as a 1950s greaser? I could not figure that out for the life of me. Then I watched Sleepless Nights, the documentary that's on the Shout Factory disc, and they're like, well, they're like, I could do anything I wanted, so this is what I did. And I'm thinking, the fact that they just let you do it, I'm in.
Well, and it's important to keep in mind the eras have changed. So there was a pretty big break between Slumber Party Massacre 1 and 2. Dave, do you have the release years?
Yeah, 1987 is the release year of 2.
So that's 5 years later. Which is a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what had changed in the market, what had made things so different, can be narrowed down to 3 little letters. VHS.
100%.
So when Slumber Party Massacre 1 came out, it was a theatrical release, but then Corman shortly thereafter sold New World Pictures. But because he's a genius, he kept all of the catalog of films. So then, you fast forward to like 84 or 80, somewhere in there, 85. And now he's releasing Slumber Party Massacre on VHS. And he's like, well, I'm seeing returns that are better than the theatrical release. So that's why you got all these sequels to Corman movies at that era, because he realized, like, I can make these movies. Literally what he would do is, while other companies like Dino De Laurentiis's company or Vidmark or all these companies, they were always obsessed with massive growth. So their attitude would be, whoa, we can get all of the world will pre-buy this movie for like $500,000. And then we could make the movie for $500,000, then sell it in America, and whatever we make in America is all profit. Well, Corman would be like, they'll pay us $500,000 for this film, so let's make it for $500,000 and have $250,000 in profit.
Genius.
Before the film is even released. That's why Corman outlived all of his competitors, and to this day, he walks the earth while Dino De Laurentiis's family cries in mourning. But it's a little dark, but
dark.
Jesus,
I would expect nothing less.
But no, legit though, he always had that savviness, and throughout the 80s and 90s, he would constantly make movies for either the advances the VHS companies would give him, the advances overseas would give him, or the advances cable television would give him, and he'd always make the movies for less than those advances.
Yeah.
So when the movie was wrapped, his company had already netted like at least $100,000 in profit. And that's how he stayed in business basically forever, in perpetuity. And his competitors would not do that. They would spend all of the money and then hope they made more. And Roger was always very tricky like that. But because of that, you got to look at Slumber Party Massacre 2 as a film where he wanted Deborah Brock to, I believe that one was Deborah Brock's. He wanted Deborah Brock to make a feature film. He wanted to give her the opportunity. He wanted to get that IP pumping again. And then on top of all that, he made the film for money that was prepaid for the film. It literally could not fail. The movie had so much money behind it already. He was like, all he was thinking was like, we've already made a profit, and then we'll sell it to cable and see how it does there too.
Well, and I think also it's important, especially with your knowledge of this, Henrik, to bring up at this point that Roger was the guy that preferred, how many reels was it? Or he shot on the short pieces.
I want to say it was 3 reels. No. So
reels,
it has nothing to do with short ends.
Oh, it doesn't. Okay.
It has nothing to do with short ends. But because of Roger's days as a film distributor being entirely theatrical, he would keep the film. I want to say it was 3 or 4 reels. He would demand that the film stay on a certain number of reels, because basically, if your movie was under 82 minutes, it could fit on 3 reels. But if it was over 82 minutes, even by 1 minute, it had to be put on another reel. And the reason he would reduce that was because he saved money on shipping by having the film have less reels.
Exactly.
And then when he went to home video, he was like, hey, the 82-minute rule has worked really well for us. Let's keep that going to make sure our movies, for the most part, stay at a pace that really keeps people coming back for more.
And the reason I bring this up is because going by the original trilogy, which is what we've had only for so long, you can watch 3 movies in a series in under 4 hours. Can you name another series that has that? I know that's like a simple kind of thing, but it's like, as somebody who really has enjoyed shorter movies and sat through Oppenheimer and loved Oppenheimer, but man, there's nothing more comforting than a fucking 90 minutes and under movie for me.
It's so rare now too. I remember I was listening to a Kevin Smith podcast he did a couple of weeks ago. As of this recording, he was talking because now he owns a theater.
Yeah,
and he was talking. It's so nice to have movies that are just over or under 90 minutes, where you're not committed to a 2-hour thing. And with a horror movie, in my opinion, it's hard if you overstay your welcome over 100 minutes. You better be something really frigging special. Whereas that 87 to about 95 minutes somewhere, and that means a lot. That's enough to hold your attention. You can watch multiple of these in a row. You're having a good time. You can watch these at a party, and you can invite people in to riff on them. Anything beyond that, it kind of gets annoying, I find, because like you don't get people together to watch, like, I don't know, Oppenheimer. Sure, you're going to have a good time watching it, but it's not something you can talk through. Whereas these movies, you can talk through, you can have a good time. These movies, when Hen was talking there, thinking how you show this to everybody, that's what these movies are. They're perfect sample platters of horror and exploitation, but not stupid. You know exactly what you're getting. You are getting exactly what is advertised. Dave, as you said in the first couple minutes, when that title card pops up, the music hits, that's perfect. And I'm not saying these are going to be like Hitchcockian, remembered in 2 or 3 generations, but those who know and can view these movies as something unique and use something. If you want to get someone excited about horror movies, you can do that with these.
And
I guess, yeah. So let's dive into number 2, which, like I said, is a very strange and unusual experience.
So we are talking 1987 release date, running at 75 minutes, according to IMDb. Again, they may run a little longer in regards of releases, because I know there may be some unrated footage. I'm not 100% sure. But the plot of Slumber Party Massacre 2, Courtney, the younger sister of the new girl across the street in the first film, is all grown up now, but suffers from nightmares about big wet incident. She and other members of her female rock group go to a condo for the weekend to play music and have fun with their boyfriends. Courtney's dreams are of her sister, who is in a mental institution, warning her of having sex, and the dreams begin to spill into real life, threatening Courtney and her friends as they begin experiencing an attrition problem. That is IMDb's summary of this film.
And all I have to say is, I want to be your Tokyo convertible. I want to get next to you.
I will say, as awesome as that song is, I really, really fell hard for Can't Stop Loving You last night. That song
it's a great song.
Oh, that song's too good.
And I think the group who did it, I think they were called Wednesday Nights or something, or Wednesday Weekend or something. The group that they found out was going to be the music for this, and evidently when the directors and the producers were putting this together, they had no idea what they were doing. So they were just calling different record companies around town, and they ran into some guy who says, I think I got something you might like. And then when you got the music in the movie, it's really, really goddamn catchy.
Yeah.
And then I found out that Crystal Bernard has a fair degree of musical talent as well. When she was on Wings, now in that show, she played a cello, which she can't do in real life, but she's a fantastically talented singer. And then I found out the girl who plays the drummer in the group, her dad was a drummer, and she kind of had an idea what she was doing, but not so much. But I think it was the director of photography or somebody taught her how to play the drums for all those sequences in the movie. And he was really encouraging and cheering her on to learn. And that's something about these movies too. I've really kind of noticed, at least in all the behind the scenes stuff, these movies have amazingly supportive casts and amazingly supportive behind the scenes crew that really, I think it ends up on the screen in very unexpected ways, where you just get a really good chemistry and vibe coming from everybody. And despite being a short 75 minutes, there really isn't a moment of downtime or time that you feel bored. It's constantly moving along. And that's something I guess, Hen, you just kind of mentioned with the 3 reel structure. You got to keep that pace going. You got to keep the audience engaged. And that's something I'm really noticing with all these Roger Corman movies. And I'm really enjoying that. I don't know what that says about my attention span as I move into old geriatric age, but I like my moving pictures to be entertaining.
Listen, you're talking to one guy whose favorite film, like one of the favorite horror films of all time, is Humanoids from the Deep. So you're not going to offend me. So you're fine.
So the thing that I loved about this is the guy who plays the driller killer. The fucking charisma coming off this guy is astounding. Like it's goofy, it's over the top, but it's so much fun. And I think a few weeks ago, I don't think I ever told you guys this, but I did a deep dive into what happened to the driller killer's guitar prop.
Oh yeah, well, it went on eBay.
Yeah, it went on eBay. Somebody restored it.
Yeah,
and it's functional. They found. I think it's in a private collection somewhere in California, and just the fact that horror fans care enough to do this, because like one of my favorite hobbies is to look for props from movies. I mean, it is my dream to own something from the movie Aliens. I have a Gerber Mark II, which is the knife that Bishop uses on Hudson's hand.
Oh,
it's
wow.
an original Vietnam version. And I've got the machete from Friday the 13th Part 2, where they kill the guy in the wheelchair. I have one from 1982. That's the same model, and a machete from Friday the 13th Part 4, same model that's been restored. So sometimes when I go down the movie prop kind of thing, I like to find out who's working on it, who's the special effects guy who did it. And Slumber Party Massacre 2 has a lot more special effects, and they're a lot more over the top. Like, as I found out while watching this movie, don't eat SpaghettiOs while watching the bathroom scene. That was a fucking mistake.
Whoopsie. No problem.
No
Anytime. But I also want to mention, you mentioned the driller killer in this one being so charismatic. That's Atanas Illich, and I don't know if you know much about him, but this was his big shot at Hollywood stardom. He was from the Illich family, who was famous for founding Little Caesars Pizza.
What the fuck? No way.
He's not lying there.
He's currently, isn't he currently the CEO of
currently
Little
the CEO?
Oh my God.
No, he's from that family.
Yeah.
That's wild.
He also put out a solo album, which Dave and I believe both own.
Yeah, I have it on vinyl, and I think you do too.
Yep.
Oh my God, that is so
and it's
cool.
not a bad album. I've actually listened to it, because the one thing you'll learn about Henrik as you become his friend is that you can buy him records. He'll never play them.
No, it's for the artwork.
But just like my sister.
Yeah, it's crazy, because that's one thing that I've always picked up on this movie is Atanas's energy through this movie makes it so that you want to hang out with him more. So the whole dreaming and everything that you have with Courtney through the first, Atanas only appears in their story in the last 25 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
He's throughout the film.
Well, no, like in their story, like actually in their reality.
Oh, I see what you, yeah, just the last like 25.
Yeah, he actually comes in as the killer in the last 25 minutes, but he's, as Henrik said, he's through the whole film. But at the same time, like that energy he has for the dance numbers of Let's Buzz and Can't Stop Loving You, it's so much fun that's why, in regards to 1 and 3, which we'll get into 3, of course, in a little bit, but 1 doesn't have a lot of those humor moments for me. It doesn't have a lot of that. I don't want to say fun, but it's a slasher film. Like when certain characters die, you hate it. Like even though the coach shows up at the last 10 minutes of Slumber Party Massacre and like you've only spent like 15 minutes with her, you still hate it when she bites it. So it's like you have that, and then with Slumber Party Massacre 2, last night I was like, the only person I want to see die is TJ, and that's because TJ's pissing me off right now.
What's your problem? You know what blew my mind? I'm trying to remember the movie. I watched a movie recently, or maybe he wasn't on Freddy's Nightmares, was he? That actor?
Oh God, I don't think he was. I feel like we would have mentioned him if he was, and I don't feel like we've had a Slumber Party 2 mention.
But I know that I watched a movie recently that the actor Joel Hoffman, who played TJ, was in, and it shocked me because he's so not like that character. It was Slaughterhouse. He was in Slaughterhouse when we watched it. We watched Slaughterhouse on Joe Bob's Last Drive-In. And he just is nothing like that character in Slumber Party Massacre 2.
Well, and he's
that
also
surfer
in Pumpkinhead.
dickwad thing. He is in Pumpkinhead.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. But I just want to give my hats off to him because he was so good at playing that like surfer dickwad that I really just thought that was who he was.
Dude, the part where he throws her in the pool and like it's like you've been with Courtney for the last like 5 minutes. She clearly does not need to go for a swim, and he just drops her in and then sends her almost into a freaking Caesar. It's just like, my God.
It's pretty hilarious. I would do it too.
You're a dick.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's just so much in here that works. And then like the over the top kills, I would wager the bathroom sequence is their homage to Nightmare on Elm Street 1, stuff like that. The pus face, that's a wonderful effect. And especially to come out of a Corman sized budget, that was great. One of the stories that one of the special effects guys was saying, you know what? This was my Hollywood dream, to build body casts in someone's backyard next to dog shit. Living the dream, folks. And I had a really
quit show business.
Never. And I was just like, again. And then he was talking about when the driller killer was practicing with the prop, he threw it across a laneway and it broke, and he was really upset about it. And I'm thinking, you know what? Some actors can, they can get really into their parts, and sometimes they disconnect from this. But just hearing that little bit of a behind the scenes story, how he was upset that he ruined something because it would affect how he was being portrayed on screen, again, just really endeared me to him in this. And again, Crystal Bernard, who plays Courtney, like I said, I've had a crush on her for so long, and seeing her do something that wasn't sitcom-y was really kind of fun to me. Like, everybody in this movie is, like I said, just there's something to them. And I guess whoever is the casting director, they pick the right people for these movies. Cause like, it's kind of like and this might not be an apt comparison, but I think of Andrea Romano from Batman, the animated series, the voice director, the person, like, that's who you pick. And whoever casts for Corman's movies, there are very few times where they don't pick someone who's exactly who you want. And I think of the girl, Kelly Maroney from
Night of the Comet, Chopping
Mall.
Yeah, like, that's perfect casting. And when I look at this movie, like, especially, what's the guy's name again? Ilianich or whatever?
Atanis Illich.
Yeah,
Atanis Illich and Crystal Bernard, perfectly cast. Like, it really elevates what should be something stupid and isn't. And every other supporting character around them, like I said, the guy who plays TJ, you're a fucking idiot, but it works. And it's so amazing just to have that come out on screen so well. And then again, one of my favorite parts of this movie is the last sequence where they're going through the half-built construction site.
It's very
like that.
Yeah, it's
Can't
effective.
It is
you. Effective.
Well, sorry, please.
Sorry, Han. I was going to say, like, you think about this, like, that's a set that nobody built that. Someone had to go and scout that location, and it works so well.
I hate to blow your mind, but those movies had those movies had a decent sized budget. Every interior scene in Slumber Party Massacre 2 was a set.
Really? That wasn't just someone's apartment somewhere?
No. They built sets because Corman owned a studio, which they called the Lumberyard because it used to be a lumberyard. And but no, so I don't know the story behind the house under construction, but they totally could have made houses that looked like they were frames that looked like they were under construction for cheaper than making actual facades. So I wouldn't be shocked if they actually made those. Or I also wouldn't be shocked if that was just Roger's neighborhood and he was like, they're building new houses on the block. I bet we could film on them before they're done.
Well, and according to Wikipedia, that budget was $500,000.
Yeah, they kept it at $500,000 for almost all of them. I think the first one was like 300.
That's right.
grand. So, but so I also want to mention fact check on Atanas Illich. He was never the CEO of the major family business, Little Caesars. He worked in varying degrees at Illich Holding, which is the company his family founded that handles their big investments, which are Little Caesars Pizza and the Detroit Red Wings and the Detroit Tigers.
Oh, wow.
The sports teams. So those are all owned by the Illich family.
Now, does he ever do conventions?
I don't think he ever has.
He has not.
I don't think because he's never even done like a documentary about the movies.
Yeah, I don't think there's any modern interview. I mean, you could probably find a modern picture, but I don't think there's any modern interview of him at all. Because
now, do you think is
he in Sleepless Nights, Birdman?
No,
I don't know. He wasn't, which really kind of surprised
think so,
me.
Yeah.
No, I don't think he has much of a good sense of humor of that time in his life.
He probably does.
That's really unfortunate because I've seen people cosplay as that.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, that's wild. The fact that, he couldn't just give some documentary filmmaker an afternoon of his times. I think that would be really to add something. Like, I know one of my friends who's a director does the documentary series In Search of Darkness, and maybe David Weiner could reach out to him because I think that'd be a fun interview if he could ever swing that.
I mean, if they can get Eric Freeman, they can get anybody at this point.
Well, they had to hunt him down. We know where Atanas is. He just ain't returning calls.
That's fair.
We'll send bounty hunters. But yeah, I mean, like, what was your favorite part of Slumber Party Massacre 2? And then we'll move on to number 3.
I think I know, Henry. Do you want to go, Enrique? Because I think I might know yours already.
Oh, you're going to call me Enrique now. I see, white boy.
I'm going back and forth. You know this.
No, you're all good. No, gosh, I mean, my favorite part is, honestly, I think my favorite part is the ending. Yeah. Without spoiling a ton, I think my favorite part is the reveal that he's in bed with her. The reveal that this is psychosis is what we've been witnessing this whole movie. We haven't been witnessing something quirky. We've been witnessing something broken inside of this woman's head. I felt like that ending was actually done really well, and I never felt like it felt like a cop-out. Yeah. I felt like it all made sense.
I can see that.
So I think that's my favorite moment because I always feel like hell yeah when the credits roll on part 2.
And to piggyback on his favorite moment, this wasn't my favorite moment. It was a thought I had. Are you familiar with the French film Hot Tension, aka High Tension?
I am not.
So, God, Hen, what fucking era was that? Was it 2000?
That was the early 2000s.
Early 2000s?
2005-ish.
There's a really good extreme horror. I use extreme because the violence in it's pretty heinous. About this woman that's staying with a friend who's staying with her family in the country, and a killer shows up and knocks off the entire family, kidnaps the friend, so the other friend has to basically follow them, and there's a whole wicked path. You find out, spoilers at the end of the movie, that the friend is actually the killer. Then this whole visualization of having another killer in the house, it's actually her having these issues where she's basically lashing out in violence and knocking off anybody that gets in her way to be with her friend. The car scene in this, where they get away in the car for a brief 15 seconds until that drill comes through the driver, reminded me of High Tension because Courtney and the one other chick, I can't remember her name right now. I can't remember her name right now. But anyway, the one chick that's with Courtney in the car, they both go running into the construction, and then that's when Atanas with the drill is chasing them and everything. But it's like the whole time I was thinking of that car scene, I was like, this is High Tension. But going off of my favorite moment in this, it's got to be the Let's Buzz. I know that's just a cop out, but like that gives you. I feel like it is because it's like that's an easy scene to pick because it's one of the most memorable for the song.
Because
alone.
It's great, yeah.
But Let's Buzz just completely sets you into the mood of this film where it's like there is really, really heinous violence going on, but also isn't it a catchy tune?
I got an unknown amount in a Swiss bank account.
No, that's place at the Ritz. I got it with my hits.
No, so and I want to point out, by the way, that song at the time that movie was made, that recording we cannot get. Because that recording was done by I believe the original songwriter.
Yeah.
But you can get a version recorded by the Paladins on like Apple Music and stuff, and it jams.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
It jams.
I may have to hide a 30-second sample of that at the end of this podcast. But yeah, like ultimately, yeah, that's my favorite part too. Because when I texted you guys, it took me by such surprise, and it's so much fun. And I can't think of many horror movies where it really wraps me in that sense of joy and wonder and fun, despite people being disemboweled like seconds before. But yeah, it's so strange and out of place, but you don't question it. You just kind of go with it.
It's that suspension of disbelief in regards of the violence you're seeing as being a film, and it's like there's nothing wrong with that. But in reality, if you were in these events, like, you'd be pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about slasher films in general, is they're that kind of escape to where it's just like, I know what I'm getting. I know what I've signed up for. One of the films that I showed Henrique recently, which I know he's actually acquired, is I showed Henrique Death Screams that just recently got released by Arrow. And that is 100% a film where it's like, hey, let's meet these characters. Let's go to a carnival. Let's have a cemetery ceremony. And then the killer shows up in the last 15 minutes and kills us all. And there's a few deaths sprinkled out here and there, but it's just like, you know what you're getting when you get a slasher film. And even with that knowledge of knowing a slasher film, you do not expect Slumber Party Massacre 2, because you've got songs, you've got jokes, you've got gags that are like, visual with the special effects, with the zit, with the literal bloodbath. You just have this fun with this movie because everything that you imagine about a slasher film you get, but wait, there's more.
Yeah, like, this is a movie I do not think could be made today. I cannot see someone matching this energy and unexpected vibe like this movie captured.
Yeah, cocaine is like 8 times as expensive as it was.
I will say, so we'll tie this back into both the runtime comment that you and I had, Birdman, and also the general opinion I have of this film. I like Terrifier. I don't think Terrifier. I don't think Terrifier is a bad series at all. I appreciate the first one. I enjoyed it a lot. But like with Terrifier 2, you have the Clown Cafe song, but you also have a 2-hour and 20-minute slasher film that kind of personally, and this is me speaking personally, so if you have your hate mail, just send it to me, not Birdman.
Please.
It's one of those things where it's like, I've seen Terrifier 2 twice now. I saw it with Henrique in the theater, and I saw it with my friend Courtney because she had wanted to see it. And basically, I enjoy the film up to a certain point to where it just feels like there's a lot of padding there. That goes back to the whole thing of, these perfect runtimes. I can watch a 75-minute movie before I go to bed, or I can watch it in bed, and if I fall asleep to it, I've seen it 100 times. With those longer films, it's just like you kind of get to a point where it's like, this is a slasher film. It shouldn't exceed 90 minutes. So the fact that Slumber Party does that in under 80, or Slumber Party 2 does that in 80, but also has all these fun tunes that'll be in your head the next day, I cannot hate that. Like, that's just a very good time. That's a good time with friends. It's a good time to show anybody who's a fan of slasher films. This is kind of the perfect starter point if you want to peg where they're going to go.
So I guess with that, we move on to Slumber Party 3, which is probably my least favorite of the series. And I had to watch this on YouTube just because I couldn't find a copy streaming anywhere, and I wasn't going to pay for it.
It is not anywhere. And speaking of YouTube, how'd you find that? Because literally, when I knew we were going to do this podcast, I was looking today while I was at work, because I was like, well, I can throw it on and just watch it in the background. I couldn't find a single link that wasn't just a kill count.
It took me forever to type in the right search terms, but
it.
you would be surprised what you can find on YouTube.
I get it.
You go into the deep dark recesses. But yeah, I watched it, and there are parts of this movie I like the kills in it. I like some of the characters, but this one seems just kind of fucked up for all the wrong reasons. There's one scene, like, trigger warning, I guess here. It's kind of rapey, and I do not like it. I actually looked at my wife. She was just about to leave to go do something for me. I'm thinking, okay, you're going to see something on screen I'm not really comfortable with, so you should probably go. And it just wasn't cool. And that's the only time during these Slumber Party Massacre movies where I've had a moment where I'm thinking, this isn't working for me. That's the only time.
I was going to say, you want to take this one in regards to the feeling?
Yeah.
Well, no,
Let the hate flow through you.
Oh, I love part 3.
He loves
I
part
adore
3,
it.
and I enjoy part 3 too. But we both agree what he's gonna say right now is this is a mean film.
It has a level of mean-spiritedness, which honestly was pretty much missing from the first two, which is one of the reasons I like it. It made me remember part 3 because part 3 has this level of mean-spiritedness. It has this element of sexual trauma that basically feeds throughout the entire film. And I thought that the way they handled it was really good. I don't think you're supposed to like those moments in the film. I think that they're supposed to be unpleasant. I think if you did like them, you would need a therapist.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, like I don't know, like when you find out the killer's motivation and he talks about his abuse, I'm thinking, okay, didn't see that coming. Yeah, it's mean. And I don't know. And again, we just talked about Terrifier 2, which is really fucking mean too, but it's fun and gleeful mean. This is sad shenanigans mean, and I don't.
See, I found Terrifier 2 got so mean spirited, I had trouble enjoying it.
Yeah, same. Like,
but that's my personal taste.
I don't even know where to pick on this one. Let me give the facts real quick. Let me give the facts real quick on it. So we are talking the year of 1990. Yeah, 1990. And the synopsis in regards to IMDb is Jackie Cassidy and her friends are stalked by a serial killer while having a slumber party. This movie is, I believe, the longest if you get the unrated cut, which I think is 85 or 87 minutes. But according to IMDb, it is running at a pace of 1 hour and 27 minutes. So the 87-minute cut is what they expect. But with this film in particular, the kills aren't fun. The characters you lose aren't fun, but you follow this story because they introduce the killer like the first 30 minutes, I think, that in regards to who it actually is.
Yeah.
It's pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah. And the first kill, if I remember correctly, is the pizza delivery chick, and she has her hands literally held behind her and has the drill ran through her, which is the first time that I think actual like restraint has been used in regards to the drill, because usually they just throw it forward. So you're already set up with the idea that this is in a distress restraint, course of action in regards to these executions. And the thing that I found when I revisited one of the kill counts today is the kills aren't quick. In Slumber Party 1 and 2, for the most part, the kills are quick because Russ Thorne usually runs the drill across the throat or through them entirely. With 3, there's some time there, and especially with the killer's demise himself, you kind of wait for these kills to happen, and because of that, there's these dialogue scenes and some terror scenes that build up the tension for these characters that you really learn to like. So when their demise starts happening, it's probably the hardest of the series. But what I love about Slumber Party 3 is you have a story that is not like the other two films in regards of it deals with mental health that, was touched on in part 2, of course, but for the killer's, motivations and for the survival instinct and all that, it really picks up to where you don't have the cheesy score from 1 or 2. You have some seriously terrifying music beats. You have scenes that are unexpected, which, do happen in 1 and 2 for the most part as well. But 3, it's just, you do not have this is a slasher film feel as much as this is almost a crime film feel, because you get the motivation of the killer, which doesn't happen a lot, I would say.
It feels like it's a transitional period for the series, whereas 1 and 2 are firmly planted in the 80s. This one definitely feels like a 90s film. There are some moments in this I will genuinely say that I really did enjoy. There's a moment when these two characters are downstairs and they're setting up something, and they talk about there's a swordfish and a spear gun. And this guy's talking to this girl, and he's talking about, well, I trust you like a so-and-so. I really like this girl, and I want to say something, and I want to do something, but I don't know how to do it. And she gives him this really good piece of advice about, sometimes you just go for it. You lean in and kiss them. And they have this awkward moment. But there's something about that moment, and I guess I'm just an old softy because spoiler, I guess, weird Birdman admission. When I like to write romance. I really love teenage romance and young adult. So Enrique, expect a horror thing for Weekly Spookies with a little bit of romance in it.
Good.
But I love that unexpected moment of just lighthearted kind of tenderness for just a minute or two.
Yeah.
And that's something I really did like. And there was something else I noticed about this movie, and I don't know whether it was intentional or not. After Ken gets wounded, who's the driller killer, he smashes a light above him and he keeps smashing things. And I got to thinking, because I was watching Mission Impossible 1 a couple of days ago, and Tom Cruise takes a light bulb and he crushes it so he can hear when people step on it. And I don't know whether that was intentional. I'm thinking, if the killer was that smart to create a soundscape around him, that is way more clever than this movie has any credit to be.
Well, it was more brutal than that. He wanted to make anybody who wanted to escape him have to crawl through broken glass.
Okay,
because he knew that they were barefoot. Well, yeah, because he knew they were barefoot. He knew they were barely clothed. And I think that the thing that I love about part 3 is that the mean-spiritedness is not for the sake of it. It's earned.
Yeah.
What we have is we have a psychotic killer, just like in the other 3, but unlike in the other 3, this psychotic killer makes a lot of sense when you know his backstory. He's the perfect example of hurt people hurting people.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason he wants to hurt these girls is because he was very, very hurt when he was a child. And honestly, if I had been tapped on the shoulder to make Slumber Party Massacre 3 and I had watched 1 and 2, I would not be surprised if my choice would have been to make a pitch black, totally dark one either, because I love throwing a monkey wrench in wherever I can get one. And I really appreciate what they did with it, because I just think, life's too short to make the exact same movie again and again. And I that's why I like it. And a lot of people say that that it was the death of the series, but I would have to disagree. The death of the series was the fact that by 1990, slasher movies were not popular at all anymore.
Yeah.
So, and even with that in mind, the movie did really well in its limited theatrical run.
Well, and are you aware too that Corman actually put the molestation stuff back in after the film was turned in? That was a reshoot.
Oh, really?
You mean like he got it around the MPAA?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
because I'm sure Corman thought that stuff was important.
Yeah, that was a reshoot on his part. When he got the original film, he wanted to add something to give the character motivation for the killing, and that's what he added.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess sitting here talking about it, it is my least favorite of the 3, of the original 3, but it does have some moments that I do appreciate. In terms of kills, I think my favorite was probably the signpost was pretty
running
amusing.
at the door, fucking running at the door, charging at the door with a signpost. You just don't see that enough.
And then I guess when all the girls literally give him the fucking beat down right at the end.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty intense. But yeah, and I think this movie has the highest survivability.
I think it also has the lowest body count.
Yeah.
Because I think
although the guys who die in it are fucking stupid.
you could say that about most men in this series, though, to be honest.
Yeah, like the men are written to be utterly out to lunch, and it's fucking, you know what? Whatever. I'm all here for final girls here, but yeah, like just the guys in the series, almost all of them are universally dumb. I think the smartest one was probably the neighbor in part 1.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
And he bit it because, wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess let's move on to the final one. And this is a movie, again, didn't know it existed until you guys told me, and thought it was bullshit until it wasn't. And some of these requels or reimaginings, the terms that Scream 5 and 6 have kind of thrown at us in the last couple of years, I didn't know what to expect going into this because I'd only seen Slumber Party Massacre 1 and 2 at this point. So this is a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watched it, I was so surprised that it took what I thought I knew, turned it on its head, And I really appreciate it because, I guess in short, the fact that they were fucking ready for him. And I loved that. So, Dave, if you want to sum this one up, this is so good.
All right. According to IMDb, a remake of the 1982 slasher film about sorority girls attacked by a maniac killer with a larger electric drill. We are talking release date of 2021 and 85 minutes in runtime. So, essentially, you can watch 4 films in less than 6 hours, and that's pretty impressive.
Not exactly, the Marvel Infinity Saga, but not fucking bad either.
No, and to go back to what you were saying about the director, this is Danishka Esterhazy, and she had done, as you said, the Banana Splits film. Slumber Party Massacre was her second film into that. Before that was I Was a Lorena Bobbitt and Vagrant Queen. She has some other stuff on her resume, but this was one that, if I remember correctly, Henrique, came from Sci-Fi, right?
Yeah, it was made with the plan for it to be a Sci-Fi original release as well. That's where most of the financing came from for the film.
So with this, because it was a Sci-Fi original movie, I went in with wrong expectations.
That happens.
Because sometimes Sci-Fi can produce some pretty fun things.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, I was expecting Asylum levels of stupid. And what I got was something not that. Like I said, once I was willing to let go of me being a Slumber Party Massacre purist, once I let that go, I had so much fun with this. I was so surprised at how clever this movie was. I was surprised in terms of remakes or sequels. In some ways, parts of it work better than some of the Halloween requel stuff. And I was like, I really dig this. And I didn't expect that from a sci-fi movie, which proves you don't necessarily need to have a huge budget or, the biggest name director. You just have to have someone who gives a shit and really wants to have fun with the property, have some fun with some kind of tropey shit at the same time, throw in some meta humor and meta thinking. And I honestly, this is in terms of the entire quadrilogy, this is probably my second favorite. And that really surprised me. Yeah, I did not expect that.
So to give perspective, though, in regards of this being in the hands of the person it was for writing standpoint, Suzanne Kelly is the writer on Slumber Party Massacre 2021. She also did Leprechaun Returns in 2018, which was also a legacy sequel to a very well-known series for the most part. So
which one was that? Ba-dum-bum.
So you had somebody that had hands on a project that definitely had its fans, but as Henrique and I like to call them, the black t-shirt crowd, you weren't going to really pick up on mainstream people for Slumber Party Massacre series. So to give it to somebody that had done the Leprechaun series, which was more so in the mainstream than Leprechaun, that's a pretty solid choice in regards to making a memorable film, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and I think that it was a huge getting the director of the Banana Splits movie, because that movie had just done pretty well for, I want to say, Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
And that was a big film, and the fact that, the big payoff was also that Danishka, I believe is her name, or Danishka or something like that.
Danishka, it's Danishka, I know for sure, because she was on Junk Food Cinema.
But I know the big benefit for her is I believe she's based in South Africa.
Yes.
So, and that's the other win, is it's like, oh, you have this accolade, you're this good of a director, you fit like all of the elements we want for a director on this, and you're in a country that's incredibly affordable to make the movie in the first place, then we want you.
The thing that I really liked about this is the setup, the fact that the first half is essentially a remake. I'm like, okay. And again, that's what pissed me off at first. But then when they get to the second part, which is, I guess, when the real movie gets kind of going, it's them setting up the kill box to go after Russ Thorne. I thought that was fucking clever. I'm thinking they've got weapons, they've got traps, they know exactly how to trap this guy. And it's not often you see someone take it to the killer thinking, well, I know how you function. So they essentially pulled a Laurie Strode from Halloween 2018, the ingenuity of Nancy Thompson from Nightmare on Elm Street, and they weaponized these girls and they were ready for war. And it's not often you see a horror movie where the protagonists are that ready to go. And that's something I so appreciate when a horror movie takes the fight to the bad guy.
Yeah, and they went in a direction you weren't expecting. You know, you're expecting the girls to be, you know, sitting ducks because they're just having a party. Meanwhile, there's a psychopath on the loose. And in reality, they've been hunting him this whole time. It's absurd and fun and a good time. You know, that's what it really comes down to, is that's a really fun setup and a really different setup. And then, of course, there's the whole elements with like the way they depict the guys in the cabin. They're all hopeless and helpless and don't know what's about to happen. And they're all taking showers all the time.
And let's talk about that pillow fight, though.
Oh, God.
I will say, though, the only part that annoyed me a little was when I heard people praising the movie, the remake. They were saying, like, you know, it's about time, like, we get smart female characters and dumb male characters. And I was like, homie, have you watched the other three?
So, yeah, dude, the fuck.
There are no smart male characters in any of these movies.
Not even the cops in part 2.
The best. Oh no,
yeah,
they're extra dumb.
The fuck right
well,
off.
Aren't they Officer Kruger and Officer Voorhees?
Officer Kruger and Officer Voorhees, you are correct.
And then there's the other guy.
I love it.
And then there's the one guy, I think his last name is Mr. Damn Kids or something like that.
That sounds accurate.
But yeah, like the reboot, just it worked so well. And even when they find, like, once they kill him and they literally hack him to pieces, they're like, okay, we're going to keep an eye on this just in case he decides to pull some supernatural shit. And then even then they start like, okay, how do we get out of here? What do we got to do? And then they throw the Friday the 13th twist at you with like, oh yeah, it was actually my mom all along. And again, it was tropey, but it was fun. And the fact that one of the things I really appreciated is it could be a throwaway gag, but it really worked in service of the plot. The poisoned cookies.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm thinking, all right, I like that. Like, that is just enough, because now you're like, to put this in Dungeons and Dragons terms, now you're giving them stat debuffs. So now they're not ready for war. You've disabled them. You've given them a weakened constitution. Now they're really going to have to fight for their lives. And the fact that they turned a simple weapon like a nail gun into like, basically like a sniper rifle, I was like, holy shit.
Oh, there's so much fun in it.
Truck.
It's definitely more it's perfect for the modern era of meta loving meta horror fans, you know. It really like brings the noise.
Yeah, and again, from sci-fi, you don't expect it. And I found this movie, again, randomly when you guys told me about it, and I found it on the most unexpected place. Up in Canada, we have a service through a company known as Bell, which is the big phone company up here, and it's called Crave. And Crave, I guess, has a deal with like Warner Brothers or something. So we get like a lot of the old WB movies. We get like some of the newer releases like Batman and all that shit. And I randomly just found it in the horror movie section there because I wasn't expecting to find much there because it's always this modern crap. And like I said, I was so thrilled by it. And just knowing that this director has done these other movies, it makes me really excited to check out what else they've got going on. And I gotta say, just by hanging out with you two, since like we've been friends for almost a year now.
Yeah,
since that first meeting.
Yeah.
And I'm really getting back into the horror genre. I've contributed stuff to Weekly Spookies. I got 2 stories on the go right now.
Hell yeah.
I'm really getting back into this genre of films, and I forgot how much joy it brings me. Not because I enjoy watching people get dismembered, but it makes me wonder, or it makes me appreciate smart script writing, atmosphere, setup. I love special effects. I love props, and I don't know, just it's a fun way to fall in love with movies again. Like my first love for movies was RoboCop and Aliens. but horror movies was like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. And now that I'm discovering these smaller films that maybe not a lot of people know about, they might have heard the name of, it's something I'm really hoping people who listen to this podcast will really be encouraged to check out. You get a singing, dancing killer. You get a broken man hurting people, but you also get a tender moment there too. You get, when the final girl tropes are really starting to come up, you get things that just preceded that. And then you get a bonkers movie that fucks with your expectations and gives you something astounding.
Yeah. And astounding is the perfect term for it too.
Absolutely.
So I guess as we begin to close this out, I guess, how would you sum up your thoughts on the franchise, Henrique? Then we'll go to Dave, and then we'll kind of pitch what's coming up next for us.
I think that sincerely, the Slumber Party Massacre series is very special. You also have the unofficial part 4, which was Cheerleader Massacre, which was directed by Jim Wynorski.
Get that.
Yeah, you do, because you're not an expert like I am.
Also because that movie feels nothing like Slumber Party Massacre series.
Well, it was shot on a video camera in 2001, and it was the first film Roger Corman Jr. produced. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's a very low rent thing. They did it just to see if they could. I rented it at Hollywood Video when I was a teenager. But
yeah, you did.
But so you have this series of films. They're all written and directed by women. They star women. They feature gratuitous nudity, gratuitous violence, all the things that are, make America great. And they're super fun. And the first 3 have such a massive hit of nostalgia, because you have the first one is the beginning of the 80s. It feels like the 70s still. The second one is dead ass middle of the 80s, year after I was born. And then the third one is right at the cusp of the 90s. You get so much cultural elements. You get so much of that sense of because literally to me, not to get all heady now, but like Slumber Party Massacre 3 in some ways feels kind of like you're being punished for the Reagan era. Like it feels kind of like, it's like, okay, yeah, you guys had a lot of fun. You did a lot of drugs. You banged a lot of people, but now like the chickens are coming home to roost. Okay. Cause now we got a shit economy. We got AIDS. Everything is going rough. And here's Slumber Party Massacre 3.
He smartly brought that up after we had already discussed 3 because he didn't want to go into a rant. I know this man. I know exactly what his ploy was right there.
I'm just saying that, but I just know that's one of the reasons I love it so much. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm having extra thoughts, but yeah, so I think that they all work out great. And with that all being said, the slasher movie has never been as huge as it was in the 80s, and it never will be again. Slasher movies are not a big draw theatrically. They're only occasionally a big draw now, on home video. But things like the Banana Splits movie, like Willy's Wonderland, like Terrifier,
Five Nights at Freddy's.
Well, we haven't seen it yet, but my point is, it doesn't exist yet. But you're not wrong though. My point is, like, we have these films that are able to break through the permeable layer of what horror movies are really popular right now and still succeed while being a throwback. And they tend to be these ultra violent, really quirky, really absurd concepts. And Slumber Party Massacre, the remake, is that. So in a way, it is a perfect remake because it is the movie again, but for the audience now. So while I may consider it my 4th favorite, that's because I love the movies that were for then. It's not the movie's fault that it's my 4th favorite. And frankly, being a 4th favorite of a series I friggin' love more than just about any fucking thing on earth is damning with pretty faint praise. So anyway, that's what I think. David, you have no good opinion, so we'll move on to Mike.
That's
no,
fair.
I'm just kidding.
That's fair. Dick. So, I mean, to give you the best example I can of what movies mean to me, they're both escapes. They make me have both writing tools in regards to the stuff that I write myself. When I was doing my film school, run and everything, I just had a big imprint on film in general because I've always been a movie fan. Like, I can remember the first time I ever bought like a VHS that was my own VHS. Slumber Party Massacre to me is a time capsule of when slasher films were exactly what you expected, but also didn't, because I think it's the natural name of them being Slumber Party Massacre. People automatically throw them into parodies. People automatically throw them into lower tier and whatnot. And I am one person that really, really hates a jaded moviegoer that's just like, oh, bro, I hated it. Well, why'd you hate it? Oh, it just sucked. Like, if you cannot give me a general or even specific reason as to why you didn't like it, I have issue with that, because it's just like you're kind of falling into that line. With Slumber Party Massacre, you get exactly what you're expecting, but wait, there's more. It's just like, you have the musical numbers, you have the childhood trauma in 3, you have these great buildups in regards of characters that you really, really enjoy and love, and you don't want to see any of them go. And in my opinion, that's what a good slasher film does. Yeah, you love the kills, but if you don't care about the character, then what's the point? So it's just like, you're just watching a maniac go crazy at that point. So Slumber Party Massacre for me is just that perfect set of series that I can throw on anytime, any place. And if I'm with people that haven't seen it, if I'm with friends, I'm going to have a good time. I like the fact that I have a series that I don't necessarily have to think about throwing on, because, I'm a huge fan of Halloween, a huge fan of Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, etc. But Slumber Party kind of feels like that best kept secret still, because even though people do know about it in the horror genre, you throw it out with my friends that I hang out on the regular, they don't know. So it's kind of nice to have that safety net of films where it's just like, let me introduce you to the slasher genre. Let me introduce you to absolute bonkersness, because I give Henrique one of the best credits in regards to a double feature. This motherfucker one night showed literally Sleepaway Camp 2 and then Slumber Party Massacre 2 back to back in his backyard. So
I have my moments.
I bring that up because it's just like, slasher movies have a really negative impact, I feel like, in regards, or not negative impact, negative connotation with them, just because of, the classic Siskel and Ebert, Roger Ebert, all that stuff in regards of what they do for the rights of women and all that stuff. But I personally find comfort in slasher films because you know what you're getting. You're getting a simple setting for the most part. You're getting somebody that has a grudge with the characters that you're going to come to love, but you may get a bitchin' score. You may get a really good story, or in general, you may just have a really good time with it. You know what you're getting. Somebody has stabbing implements. They're going to put them in somebody. Somebody has to fight them, etc. Slumber Party for me is that basis that I can put these on, have a good time with friends, family, etc. But they're films that I have come to love because they just have exactly what you go into looking for with those titles. And they're not always what you expect. I mean, the effects in 2 alone are very surprising. That fire stunt, which we didn't even touch on, that fire stunt at the end is pretty impressive. So in conclusion, the Slumber Party Massacre movies for me were something that I discovered when I didn't know I needed them. And now that I got to watch them with my girlfriend, and now that I've discussed them and seen them multiple times, I just have a serious comfort with these movies because they're exactly what you want from a slasher film.
Yeah. So, guys, that's going to do it for us here at the Twig Video Store, otherwise known as Loose Cannon. Once again, if you want to find these guys, you can go to freddysnightmares.com. That's right. Enrique basically held the guy hostage and got that domain name. So
I just renewed it too.
I still cannot believe we got that. Like when you texted me, they're like, "Hey, we have a domain." Well, what it is? freddysnightmares.com. Are you fucking serious?
Oh yeah.
Fucking robbed Warner Brothers right there. So yeah, guys, like seriously, go check out their podcast. These guys they've talked with everybody who's been an executive producers. They've talked with writers. They've talked with people who've been involved in the show from all levels. They've talked with Hollywood royalty like Gil Adler, who you may know from How Not to Make a Movie, but more importantly, Tales from the Crypt. There's a lot of really interesting stuff over there. They did a mailbag episode where they did a pretty deep dive on one of my questions.
That was a good that was a good fucking question, Birdman. My God.
I was just in the zone when I read that.
Fuck, we need to find a way to kickstart that. But yeah, seriously, guys, they release new episodes on Tuesdays, or if you're a Patreon, you can get it on Monday, or if you're me, you get it on Sunday. But yeah, It's a fantastic show. I cannot recommend it enough. Now, normally you would hear Enrique picking the hell on Dave there, which it's just a staple of the show. And Freddie didn't show up, so I do apologize, but that's okay. Next time.
Oh my, yes.
So yes, guys, we will have these guys back on the show to do more horror movie loose cannons because Halloween's coming. I know me, Aaron, and Alex will be talking about stuff. By the time you've listened to this, me and Enrique will be talking with James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd, and we're going to be talking about Hammer horror movies. Yet another section of the horror cinema that I've never dipped my toe into because literally I only have one leg. But it's going to be fun, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Grand Moff Tarkin kick the fuck out of people. So anyway, guys, for This Week in Geek, we have been... Say your names.
Dave. You had one job.
Dave.
No, your name's Louie.
Oh, Dave Louis Denoyer.
Esquire.
Henrique Couto.
And I've been Mike the Birdman saying, be kind, we won't.
Are either one of these any good? Sir,
What?
are either one of these any good?
I don't watch movies.
Quick, change the channel.
You're wasting your life making shit! Nobody cares! These movies are terrible!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
Now it's time for the fun part.
I love to jam it to the floor, let me twice pipes roar. Well, I'm an inch off the ground, the speakers all around, baby. Baby, do you like my sound? Let's buzz. Let's buzz. I got a rather large amount in a Swiss bank account.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net's Loose Cannon. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, here at the Twig Video Store, the place where you... Fuck, I'm going to restart that because I lost my train of thought. So 3 seconds, shut the fuck up. All right. Don't look at me, cat. Anyway, all right.